What you got? What you got? Hello, welcome to our channel Amongst the Roses. My name is Heather and this is Ranger. We are in Zone 6B and this is our second year gardening in this garden. And enough about me, let's go meet the plants. This garden's looking a little wild. I need to weed. I've been working a weird shift this week, so I've had the chance to. I know my husband's out here some weeding, which is awesome. But I've told him to leave the rows with plants alone. Here you see I have a volunteer sunflower coming up right here at the gate. Here is some lettuce that's coming up. I think this in the middle got planted a little deep, so it's taking a little longer to come up. Next we have onions. We have a volunteer potato plant there. Lots of volunteers this year in the garden. Then we have some garlic. And beyond that stick is some carrots that we planted. I think I planted them a little late. You can see I've got at least one coming up there, maybe a few. This is the potato patch, and I know it looks a little crazy right now. We've allowed the weeds to grow up because we had some trouble with some frost that killed out the leaves of the potatoes that we had that were up, and we ended up having to cut them back, so we're allowing them to grow back, and we didn't want to end up digging them up with the weeds. But now I can get in here and weed this area. But I don't know if you can tell, but there are potato plants all in here. There is a volunteer bok choy right there in the middle, and there's also some volunteer kale from last year. But there is potato plants all in here. There is another volunteer potato plant over here. This area was plowed to be planted for sunflowers, and I already have one volunteer sunflower. It is right there, and I think I may have another one right there. So that's pretty awesome. I'm still going to throw some seeds down though. We got some new sunflowers this year. So I planted peas here along the fence. I'm not sure, but I don't think this is a pea. It's probably another volunteer plant. But if you look down here, we have some peas that have came up here. And here, as well as down here. They're spotted throughout here. I don't think the seeds were that good. These are last year's peas that come up, and we dried them for the seeds, so I don't think we're gonna have a good harvest out of these. But you live and you learn. As these get taller, I'll train them to go up this fence here. So new to the garden is this arch that we created from cattle fencing, as well as this tomato trellis. We're thinking about putting in a similar trellis for the peppers. We just have to get the material first, and I'll give you a better look at that in just a second. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's an ant carrying off a dead fly. That's pretty cool. And before I show you more of the trellis, this is our kale that we let go from last year. It survived the entire winter. It's went to flower, and we're going to collect the seeds off of it. Interestingly enough, the flowers taste like broccoli, which I have recently learned that kale and broccoli, Brussels sprouts, I think cabbage, they're basically all the same species. Kale's just a different variety of the other species, and broccoli would be a different variety. So they just split off as different varieties. So that's pretty interesting. That's why the flowers taste like broccoli. And I don't know if you can see, but we have, amongst the weeds, we have some Russian red kale coming up, as well as some more volunteers from last year. We also have some baby chard coming up right now. Well, it's baby right now, but it'll be full grown rainbow chard It is right there in the middle. Here is yet another volunteer sunflower. Now I did have my biggest sunflowers pop up in this corner of the garden last year, so most likely this reseeded from that one. Here's a better look at our trellis. So there's the 2 arches we created there in the back, and then the tomato trellis that's along the tomato row, and we're thinking about doing a pepper row as well, but we definitely want to get that tomato row in because the tomatoes are actually ready to go out now. I just don't have the time today to do it. Hopefully I'll have time this weekend to put them in the ground, as well as some pumpkin that I had planted and some seeds. So when we bought this house and property, we weren't sure what was coming up here. I thought it may have been irises or tulips. When they didn't bloom when the rest of the tulips in the neighborhood bloomed, I knew it probably had to be irises. And this is the second year that we've seen them bloom. These are actually yellow irises, and they have multiplied by double since last year. As you can see, that's a huge patch of irises, and we just kind of let them grow wild. We do mow and weed eat around them, and sometimes we get a few, but they are left to their own devices and they're doing really great. So this is a flower patch I had last year growing cosmos in it, and this year I've grown some more seeds that a friend gave me. I'm growing some coneflower and some zinnias in here. There's also some volunteer plants in here as well. Some things that I'm just going to kind of let grow and see what comes to it. But this bed was half the size last year. It was very narrow, and I have expanded it this year to allow more flowers to grow. So I'm seeing my columbine that I planted last year bloom for the first time today. So I'm seeing this for the first time as I'm videoing today, and it is gorgeous. I'm pretty sure they were supposed to have been purple, not white, but anyhow, it's beautiful nonetheless. I have not really weeded this side bed here. I ran out of time the other afternoon when I was weeding the front beds. So it looks a little crazy, but we have that. I have some lilies there that are planted in the front. I'm not really sure what these lilies are. We end up digging up these bulbs from somewhere else in the yard, and I planted them here just to see what come up. It's obviously a lily, I just don't know what kind. This is a rose bush. This is my wild blue yonder. Everything's been dusted with diatomaceous earth because I started seeing aphids, and the ants and ladybugs were helping me out, but they unfortunately were not helping me out enough, so I had to step in. And this is my autumn sunset rose. This is a climber, and it needs to be tied back because it's starting to get a little crazy. There's a female rose-breasted grosbeak that's currently at my feeder. Today is the first day that I've seen these since last year. We had the male come around, but today is the first time I'm seeing the female. I did see her earlier this morning, so I'm really glad she's back. And anybody wondering, we only feed the birds sunflower seeds because they're cheap and they seem to waste less of the food versus buying the songbird mix that's just full of millet. They just throw that on the ground, and then we have millet growing up, which isn't fun. I also feed them some suet cakes because the woodpeckers seem to really like the suet cakes. But other than that, it's just black oil sunflower seeds. We get like a 30 to 50 pound bag. Pretty cheap at Lowe's, and they honestly go through it in no time. they seem to like it really well. I do have some phlox and some creeping, I can't remember the name of this plant, but anyhow I bought this from Lowe's. They're growing there in the stump and the terracotta pot. And then I have some roses over there as well. Those belong to my grandmother. They come from her yard, and I'm doing my best to allow them to thrive. I'm giving them plenty of fertilizer and water, and they are babied versus my other roses, which are kind of just left alone. I do fertilize my other roses, and on really periods of drought I will end up watering the bigger roses as well. But these guys, they're right there beside the water spigot, so I end up watering them more just to kind of help them along. So this is my front flower garden. I have some dahlias that are planted here off to the side. I left them over winter. You're supposed to pull them up and let them overwinter inside, but they actually ended up coming up, which is great. I have one back there. It's not doing so great. I ended up replanting it. It was somewhere I didn't want it. There are some orange lilies that I had purchased at the greenhouse last year. You'll see I have some sprouts coming up. I planted some seeds. I honestly don't remember what all I planted in there. I do have some calendula coming up, and you'll see that here as well. But this is a mom that my husband talked me planting it into the flower garden 2 years ago. I've always just bought mums and tossed them after the fall when the flowers have died and they start to turn brown. He insisted I plant these, and I thought, you're crazy, they'll never come up. And here they are, second year in a row, coming back, and they are huge. They'll probably get about 4 feet in diameter by the time that they're fully grown and they start producing flowers in the fall, and they just put on a show. This one here is purple and this one is white. This is a rose that was here when we bought the property. I planted some clematis here in the back. It's doing phenomenal. And then here's a cardinal rose that I got from Walmart. It is not doing as good as my local greenhouse roses, nor my great-grandmother's rose or roses that were already established on the property. It's doing pretty bad. Not sure if it just doesn't like this location or what, but I'm going to be researching what to do about this rose. I may end up moving it to a more shadier location to see if that helps it. I also have some hyacinth that is currently fading away, and this is my calendula growing here in the flower box. It's not weeds. There is a dandelion in there, but that's mostly calendula. And then we also have some rain lilies dotted here and there along the border. This is my sweet spirit rose. This thing, when I bought it, was less than a foot tall. That was 2 years ago. Every year it has just grown exponentially. I'm actually probably going to have to cut it back this fall to keep it from snagging people as they walk by on the sidewalk. But these blooms are so big and showy, and they are so fragrant. And I planted there beside of my steps, and you can smell it as you walk by. It's the perfect location for it. It is obviously doing phenomenal. Cannot recommend Sweet Spirit enough. It will not disappoint you. And I also have down below that one of the moms, and I'm actually going to be digging that up and taking it to my grandmother. She fell in love with these moms, and this one unfortunately is getting shaded out and not growing to its potential, so I will be taking it, relocating it to her house, so hopefully she has these moms for years to come as well. And then I have 2 others here. The one on the end here is purple, the middle one is white, and then the last one is purple again. And then I have some more lilies, and then there's some more hyacinth back there that is fading away. And then we have a yellow knockout rose here, and I will take you closer to look at the blooms because it's getting ready to sprout blooms all over. So here's one of those blooms, and it's just like a downy yellow. They start out pretty vibrant and then they fade to like a downy yellow. And it's my first rose to bloom this year, which isn't surprising. I think it was like the first or second last year. And you can tell on the tops here that it is just covered with buds that are about to blossom. Likewise, my sweet spirit is also covered with blossoms, and I can already smell them. Like, they already smell very fragrant, and I'm looking forward to them all opening up. And they'll probably by Mother's Day open up all at the same time. I think that's when they all opened up last year, so it's right on time. These are my tomato plants. The two tall ones I got from a greenhouse last weekend. I also have some pumpkins that I started out. And as we look at these plants, I'll just talk about these pumpkins. So we had some pumpkins growing last year. There was one in particular that I had saved seeds from probably 4 or 5 years ago. And only one plant lived after we had a hard frost. And on that plant, late fall, we had a pumpkin, and I ended up just keeping it in the mudroom over winter to see how long it would last. Well, it ended up lasting till maybe 3 weeks ago, and it started to bruise, and I knew that was going to be an indication of it rotting. So I ended up taking the pumpkin, cracking it open, gathering the seeds, and drying them out. I planted 5 of the seeds, and as you can see, all 5 of them come up. And this was probably about 2 weeks ago, so these plants are about 2 weeks old, and they will go into the garden along with the tomatoes, hopefully this weekend, if not early next week. I do have a vining plant growing in this pot. It's the black-eyed Susan vine. I just planted those, so they have not come up yet. I have a fern here. I rescued this fern from the discount section at Lowe's for like $2. And I came home and planted it, and it's grown pretty good. I've managed to overwinter it. This is the first time I've successfully overwintered a fern, and it's doing great. There's a lot of fiddleheads in there. I don't know if you can... Let's zoom in on one of them here. I also overwintered this strawberry plant, and it's doing good. It was near death whenever I potted it in this plant, and I cut all the dead off, and it's grown back twice as much. I know it's not very big, but it's doing great. Then we have some forget-me-nots that I grew from seed in here that I saved from last year. And then I have some stalks growing here, and there's some little snapdragons in there. And this is a peony I just picked up. My great-grandmother had peonies, and I always wanted one, and this one reminded me of hers, so I picked this one up, and I can't wait to find a spot to plant it. So I walked out of the garden to show you this rose. I forgot about it. So this rose was growing in the front flower garden when we first bought the house. It was just a mess of mostly branches, absolutely no buds on it. The homeowner told us that it had never bloomed since the kids had brought it for her for Mother's Day, and that she wasn't going to dig it up and take it with her. Well, it was a mess. It's obviously a climber, so I thought it would be happier out here against the garden fence if it lived at all. And this thing is just covered in blooms. Since I've moved it out here, this probably has more blooms on it than any other rose that we have. They are really small blooms, and they're like pinkish in color, pink to red, and they're just really showy. They're not super fragrant, but the bees seem to really like them, so it attracts bees into my garden. So I really like this rose, and it's really happy here. And I walked out here to show you this rose, and I have a volunteer lettuce plant. This is the lettuce we planted last year. My husband didn't care for it too much because it bolted pretty quick. It doesn't seem to do well in hotter climates, so we decided not to plant it this year, but we have a volunteer, so we'll just see how it goes this year. These are some strawberry plants I planted in this planter here to hang off the porch. They are already starting to produce strawberries. So this is the room that most of my seedlings have started out in, minus a room in the basement that we also utilized. So these are pepper plants. We do have some basil in there as well, some lemon basil. But this is the tray right here that I'm keeping. That's here off to the side. The rest of it has homes, and they will be going to their homes soon. And then I started some seeds here in this tray. We have horned melon, parsley, and cilantro, and as you can see, we have at least one sprout of horned melon. I think there's two in there, but the second one's kind of hard to see. Here's some succulents I have grown and repotted twice, doing great. Also, there's a cedar tree that we had gathered from the yard at the base of the big cedar out back, and it's doing great. It's been there for probably about 2 years now. And then in the smaller pots we have pumpkin and siennas. Having some focusing issues on this pot. I've got my longer lens on, but there is a sienna coming up there. It's pretty exciting. And I just planted those pumpkin seeds to see if they would sprout. This is also from a pumpkin that I grew last year, and those are supposed to be blue pumpkins. Here we have some tomatillos that we've started. This is our first year growing tomatillos. Kind of interested in how these guys do. And below that we have some miniature chili peppers we got from a friend last year. I didn't really do much to save the seeds for these mini chili peppers. I just dried out the peppers themselves and planted them straight in the ground. Well, straight in the pot, and we got a couple seedlings in there. That is sand on the top. I tried to put some sand in there to try to keep down the fungus gnats. I don't think it really worked. So that's all I have to show to you guys today. Hopefully in the next coming weeks there'll be more to show. Right now we just haven't got a whole lot in the garden, and we still have like a lot of weeding to do around the plants that are established out there. So I don't figure I'll do one of these very often, but I just wanted to show you guys what's growing now and what we've done to the place. Let me know in the comments if there's anything in particular that you want to know more about, or if you want to see more pictures or how-tos. We're not professionals, we're amateur gardeners. This is our second year with this big garden, and we actually expanded it this year, so pretty excited to see what comes up.